Hi, Dan. Thank you so much for joining us on our podcast today. We are deeply intrigued by this topic of nootropics, and we've had the opportunity to explore your product, which you generously provided to us. And we are so excited to jump in and discuss this topic with you today. One thing that we love to ask our guests before we get started is if you were to treat yourself to something special today with no financial constraints, what would you do?
That's a really interesting question. So I really invest heavily in growth, and usually when I splurge on things, I'll do kind of like a wellness retreat. Next month, I'm going to a retreat that is a psychedelic retreat where it's a combination, it's a multi-day retreat. It's going to be my first time doing 5-MeO DMT. It was an expensive, like something that was a stretch for me, and it's a structured process. And I'm really excited about it. So those are the types of things that I kind of splurge on. There's nothing, you know, there's nothing that immediately comes to mind, because mostly I'm fortunate enough that I get to like do things like that. And I also don't have, I never have like a desire, like I want a watch or a sports car.
Yeah.
It's just, it's really not there. And that's just my personality.
Well, we love that. Marnie and I both love the retreats and, both obviously the experience that you're going to have there, but also just the time away and like disconnecting from work and leaving, maybe you're leaving New York. And so meeting new people, whatever it is, that's great.
I think the most interesting thing that has kind of like shifted, being a founder, it's a very demanding job. And now I finally have, I actually just paid off my student loans this year. So I was like paying
Congratulations.
Congrats, that's
I know.
big.
So I have some type of flexible spending where I can actually purchase things, but I don't have time. So all of the constraints on the things that I want to do, it has to do with how much time can I spend away from the company. And so I have to be very selective.
Yeah. Well, good for you. So Dan, just kind of giving our audience a little bit of background as to how you came here and how you arrived today. Could you provide maybe some insights into those pivotal moments or experiences that influenced your journey to ultimately found Thesis?
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you the founding story of the company, and then feel free to interrupt. I'm happy to elaborate on any of it. But essentially, it came out of a personal challenge I've had my entire life. I've always struggled with classroom learning. So I was actually expelled from preschool at 4 years old.
Boy.
I know for a 4-year-old, that's pretty crazy. When I was 6, I was mandated to go to a school psychiatrist, and I was formally diagnosed with ADHD, and they wanted to put me on methylphenidate, so Ritalin. This was the late 80s, and my mom said no. She was really concerned about giving a child such a powerful medication. So I went untreated and continued to have severe behavioral problems throughout school. So I was always in the principal's office getting suspended, struggling through classes. And it was such a painful time in my life. When I was 16, I ended up dropping out of high school. I was failing most of my classes, and I just couldn't succeed in that environment. I went to work in fast food. I was making sandwiches at Subway and kind of like worked my way up through different low-level jobs. And, I watched my friends graduate high school, go off to college, and I was making minimum wage, and it was demoralizing. It was a really difficult time period. I got such a lucky break that I'll tell you the story briefly. I was waiting tables at a restaurant in Los Angeles, and a regular customer who would come in like once a week with his wife came in one day with a chef's coat. And I told him, my dream is one day to be a chef. And he said, why don't you come to where I work? I'm across the street in a hotel, and put in an application. So I went in, filled out the application. HR looked at me and said, you don't have a high school diploma. You never went to culinary school. You have basically experience at Subway cutting onions, but that's it. Like, you're not qualified. And I told them, I'm like, listen, Chef Andreas told me to come in and fill this out. They picked up the phone. 2 minutes later, the guy walks in and he's like, hire him. And they hired me on the spot.
Amazing.
And yeah, he gave me, that changed the trajectory of my life. What I found was ADHD held me back in school, but it was almost like a superpower in the kitchen. I was passionate about what I was doing, so I was able to learn really quickly. The type of focus you need in the kitchen is very different from a structured environment, and I could do like 50 things at once. So very, very quickly, I kept getting promoted. I started traveling internationally. I spent 10 years as a chef traveling, Asia, Europe, Central America, the Caribbean. I worked at a Michelin 3-star restaurant in France, which was, my dream. So I was at kind of like the top of my field. And then in my late 20s, I started to burn out. And, at that time I was an executive sous chef on board a cruise ship. And it was a very interesting and positive experience for the most part, but it's just a brutal work environment. So I was doing close to 100 hours on an average week, 6 months straight, no days off. So not one day off at all. And I just came to the realization that this isn't what I want to do with my life. Like, I started to burn out. I started to want something else. But, I still had no high school diploma, no college degree, never took the SATs, like nothing. So I tried to talk to people and see what other industries would be open. And, somehow in that process, I came to the conclusion that I wanted to go back to school, that I wanted to get an MBA. And, again, I got incredibly lucky. I found this one school in the UK and I interviewed with them. It wasn't like the best school or anything, but they said based off of my very unique profile, they would admit me into their MBA program. Their one requirement.
With no high school diploma.
Yep.
Okay. That's amazing.
Again, it wasn't like the top of the top
fine.
school.
Yeah.
But they basically said, I mean, I was making a lot of money. I was managing 50 people. I had worked in I had a successful career in one industry, and they were open to it. They told me I had to score in the 80th percentile or above on the GMAT to show that I could, do well academically and I could pass the classes. So I knew this is what I have to do. I got a GMAT study guide and I started studying. It felt like I was back in 10th grade. I would, read a page 5 times, couldn't internalize the information, couldn't sit still through the practice tests. My scores were awful. Like, in those early days, I couldn't even finish the practice test. It was like, I didn't give up. So I remember being really desperate, and I was like, this is what I want to do with my life. I know the path. I just need to figure this out. And I tried everything. So I tried different workout routines and fasting and different types of diets and meditation, ice baths, like anything that I could think of to help me study and improve my performance. And that's when I found nootropics. I had heard about them on a study forum. This was now more than 10 years ago. So nobody had heard of nootropics. I went out, I bought products from Russia and Mexico and, from Amazon. I just bought everything that I could find. And I set up the system where I would try different ingredients and study. And I could just see, is this working or isn't? Most products did nothing, but a couple of them worked. And when I figured out how to combine the ingredients into a winning formula, the results were life-changing.
Wow.
So
Wow.
when I went in to take the GMAT, I ended up scoring in the 99th percentile,
Wow.
which surprised the hell out of me. It was beyond anything I thought possible. And it was so funny. It was at that point, once I got that score, I was on leave from being a chef and was basically set that I was going to quit and I was going to go to school. And I thought that I was going to go to this school that I had already interviewed with. And I had this interim period where I started working as a GMAT tutor. So there was this one company that their whole value proposition is we only have 99th percentile instructors. And there's very few people that score that high that are willing to be teachers. And so I got the job. And I'm tutoring these people, and they're going to Harvard, MIT, and Stanford. I'm like, wait a second. Like, I'm teaching them. Why am I not applying to those schools? And so I did. And I started the process. I contacted all of those schools, and I found alumni that went through and did not have I never found somebody that didn't have a high school diploma, but I found people that didn't graduate college that went into MBA programs, and they helped me. And I ended up applying to some of the best schools in the world, and I got into one, which is INSEAD. INSEAD's a top 10 school. It's based in Europe and Asia. I got in, such an incredible experience. I didn't even know what McKinsey was and what consulting was and Goldman Sachs. And I'm in groups with investment bankers and consultants. And I'm like, wow, this is so different from anything I would have imagined. And it ignited in me this passion for learning. It was such I don't think I would have been ready for an environment like that when I was younger, but at this time period, it was great. And then I leveraged nootropics and the healthy habits that I had learned when I was studying for the GMAT. It just got better. I got this really positive flywheel where I could focus for longer, I could retain more information, I could perform well academically. And then after INSEAD, I ended up getting into Yale, where I did another master's degree. So at this point, I've spent less time in formal education than your average high school graduate, and I have 2 master's degrees. And because nootropics were so impactful, they changed my life, and I became an evangelist. I think anytime something has this type of impact, you want to share it. So I was giving them away to my friends, my family. I'm like the crazy guy at dinner parties that won't shut up about nootropics. And one of the first realizations I had was the ingredients that worked for me. So I would give people hey, this is what works for me, and you got to try it. Didn't work for everyone. So the first products actually have this is the very early products, but I started making these in my apartment. And essentially I took the process, that iterative process that I used to find my formula, but instead of taking 6 months and thousands of dollars and countless hours of research, a user could find their formula in less than a month for less than $100, and started selling them out of my apartment. And before I knew it, it just kind of grew into what it is today.
Wow. So that's such a inspiring story. And it sounds like if I'm just reading between the lines, you've always had that passion and that desire and drive in you to succeed and follow what you want. It's like with the ADHD, you couldn't focus, and the system set up in the schools was not working for you, but you seem to make it work for yourself with meeting people along the way, really leveraging a network around you, which I think is really important for people to hear, because a lot of people are afraid to ask other people for help. And I love that, this person that you met in the restaurant you were working in helped you. And then it sounds like when you were trying to get into grad school, you had people that you were contacting for advice and whatever. And I just think working with our networks is so important in today's world. And With that in mind, you mentioned a lot about the nootropics, and we would love for you to tell our listeners, what are nootropics? A lot of people, I think, listening to this will have never heard that word before.
Yeah, so nootropics are ingredients that improve some aspect of cognition. They do this primarily by modulating the levels of neurotransmitters in the synapses of the human brain. To say that simply, they're ingredients that you can take to give you more energy, to help you focus, to improve different aspects of creativity. Most of the planet takes some form of nootropics. So caffeine is the most widely known nootropic. Caffeine is also a stimulant. Not all nootropics are stimulants. In fact, most of them are not. But, I'm drinking coffee right now. Caffeine does really nothing to me, but because I've had it for so long, I just really like the taste in the morning. It's kind of like a habit. And there's been time periods where I quit caffeine. Right now, I drink it just because I like the taste. There are other things that, target different neurotransmitter systems. So, dopamine and norepinephrine are primarily for motivation, and energy. And then you have things like acetylcholine, which is learning and memory. And what we do, I can show you a little bit about our products. We have different blends. I'll show you. I don't know if you'll be able to see. These are some of our blends, and it is targeted to different neurotransmitter systems for different cognitive benefits.
So can you maybe dive in and just like briefly kind of explain the neuroscience behind the nootropics? Because we've talked about this, I think, once in an episode, like mushrooms. Some people know like some of the functional mushrooms that are out there, but that may be all they've dabbled in. And just kind of get into a little bit more about the neuroscience.
Yeah, I mean, biology is incredible. You have chemical reactions happening every second in your body, just nonstop. It's like these little machines inside of cells that are making ATP, and it's really incredible. And so like I'll make it a little bit more tangible by breaking down what they do for me. I have ADHD, and nootropics improve cognition. You don't need to have ADHD to need them. And nootropics, like especially our products that are over the counter, are not a treatment for ADHD. For me, I have taken stimulants, not when I was 6, but later as a teenager and then as an adult. And stimulants primarily target dopamine and norepinephrine. So they increase the levels in your synapses through different mechanisms of action, depending on which stimulant. You have like 5-ants, different types of amphetamine, like Adderall's amphetamine salts. You have methylphenidate. Either they're like dopamine reuptake inhibitors. They do different mechanisms, but essentially what they're doing is they're making more dopamine and norepinephrine available. That's great, and it makes me highly productive. Unfortunately, some of the more powerful medications, candidly, like they turn me into an asshole. I like to joke that Adderall should come with a warning label, may cause you to become an asshole. I couldn't deal with the crashes, the side effects, the anger, the frustration. Those amphetamines raise cortisol levels. And so I was just in this state of chronic stress. And sometimes I would feel like there's a 3-year-old in my head, like I'm waiting in line at Starbucks or something. And I'm like, God, why is this taking so long? And I would never like act out and yell, but it was just this stress and this feeling. And my relationship started to suffer, and I made the decision that I just can't do it. It is making me more productive, but it's not worth the side effects. So there are other products. So these two, and again, these are not treatments for ADHD. These are not to be compared with a prescription medication, but they target dopamine and norepinephrine. So these are, through different mechanisms of action, making those neurotransmitters more available in my synapses. And they give me enough of the benefits that I'm able to function at a much higher level than I could without. And I have none of the side effects, just none. And, you know, you do that with other neurotransmitter systems. So these two are targeted to serotonin and GABA. So for example, confidence has things like saffron, which is a weak serotonin reuptake inhibitor. Very similar to things that you would find, very similar mechanism to what you would find in an antidepressant, an SSRI. But again, SSRIs have very high side effect profiles. Again, this is not interchangeable with an antidepressant, but when you look at the science, it's a similar mechanism of action. It also targets GABA, which reduces nervousness. I actually did not take this today, but most times when I do a podcast, this is what I'll take in the morning. Amazing.
I ended up taking it today.
How do you like it?
So I like it. I mean, I've taken a few different ones. I kind of try to figure out though, like what I should take on what day. Cause so I'm still like experimenting with different ones. But yeah, I took it this morning.
And I didn't get the confidence one. And because there's a little quiz you fill out, which I was going to ask you about the personalized approach, but I took creativity this morning. But I think some of that, like I don't intake any caffeine. So are some of them, are they all available caffeine free, or are some of them caffeinated? I was confused about that.
So yeah, this is how it works. We have every single formula is available without caffeine or with caffeine.
Okay, I did not understand that. The quiz
will usually assign you if you should have it with caffeine or without. If you have the packets with caffeine, it's really easy to any day. So if you look here, you can see there's 3 pills in there. The smallest white pill in every packet is the caffeine pill. So anytime you're like, hey, I just don't want caffeine, I'm drinking coffee, just don't take that pill.
That's what I did, because when I filled out the survey, I must have said that I drink caffeine, and usually it's tea, sometimes it's decaf coffee, but I do drink caffeine most days. But I didn't want extra caffeine. So I was emailing with the company and they're like, oh, just take off the white pill. So I've just been taking the 2 other pills and not the caffeine. So you can kind of like if I want it one day, I could. But yeah, I mean, I have definitely noticed a different, like when I was taking, I can't remember which one I started taking first now. I don't think it was energy. I just was more focused, because I do have, I mean, I'm not diagnosed with ADHD or anything like that, but my brain is like all over the place sometimes. And there's just like a lot I want to accomplish. And so it's hard sometimes for me to focus. So that's where I've seen the best benefit.
Is that the clarity one?
So let me explain kind of the way that this works.
Yeah. Do you want to go through them all?
Yeah.
Yeah. So with that, I think having an understanding of the process.
Yes.
That core realization that I had many years ago, that what works for me isn't going to work for everyone. So essentially, we have a quiz that understands, basic demographic information, where your challenges are, what your goals are, and then it compares your responses to people like you. And we don't just say, okay, great. Based on your responses, you should take this form. We're getting close to where we can be really accurate with that, but we're not quite there yet. We say, based on your responses, these 4 formulas have the highest probability of working. So we take our product line, we narrow it down to 4, and then we say, in the first month, you take each one. So this is a week supply. This is a week supply. You go through and you take it for a week. By the end of the week, you should know, hey, do I like this? Is it working for me?
Can I interrupt you for 1 second? So you take one for 1 whole week, like you take confidence the entire week, and then the next week you take the next one. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. And most people don't follow directions.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
I know. The goal of the first month when you go through a starter kit is only to understand what works for you. The majority of people who try it at the end of the first month They say, wow, I really love this one formula or these two formulas. And then they order more of what works, and then they start incorporating that into their daily routine. But it's that iterative process that gets people to a better formula. We are getting very close to being able to narrow it down just off of the quiz and be pretty accurate, but we're not quite there yet.
And can you stack them eventually or no? Are they meant to be 1 week you have one, 1 week is your clarity week and 1 week is your confidence week? Or is it more like you figure out the one that works for you and that's the one you're taking?
It depends how advanced you are and what you want to do. I'll tell you how I take it, and then I'll tell you how most customers take it. I take these 3 formulas on a regular basis. So clarity, energy, and confidence. Most of the time, if I were to do a podcast, or if I have a day where I'm doing a lot of meetings, public speaking, something where I'm not sitting in front of a computer doing spreadsheets, I'll take confidence. And I know just like this is what's going to help improve my cognitive function for these types of tasks. On days where I just need to grind out some work and I'm just like, okay, I need to get a lot of work done, I take clarity, and it just dials me into this flow state where I'm able to be highly productive. And then on days usually when I'm sleep deprived, or I'm running around, I have so much that I need to do, I'll take an energy, and that just gives me the fuel that I need to get through the day. And so I discovered that by taking all of these, and it didn't even take me 1 month to get into that routine. It took me a couple, and I'm like, wow, like this is really improving my life. And then the other point that I want to say is nootropics got me to where I am today. There is no way that I would be able to function at my job without nootropics. I mean, I'm CEO of a company with 40 people. I'm constantly doing different types of tasks and meetings. I sit at a desk in front of a laptop most days. I could not do this without nootropics. But it's not nootropics alone. There's no magic pill that would take where I was and bring me to here. What happened was nootropics gave me the momentum and kind of like unblocked some of the walls that I would hit so that I could develop healthy habits, going to the gym, eating healthy. I meditate. I have different techniques to get into flow and to kind of like manage my schedule so I can be highly productive. Without those healthy habits, I also would not be successful where I am.
I think that's such a key point too, because there isn't a silver bullet for anyone, and we all are different, but it's like, it just gives you enough of a boost. Sometimes you just need that little bit of a jump start to get on the path that you have within you. And that's what these nootropics are doing. And they're very personalized and customized, and you've kind of figured out what your body needs based on your job and your personality and all that.
Yep, exactly.
It reminds me of the movie Limitless with Matthew McConaughey. Did you see that movie? I don't know if it's Matthew McConaughey, or maybe it's Bradley Cooper. Do you know what I'm talking about? Bradley Cooper, where he takes the pill and he has all the extra energy and he's getting so much done. And I mean, obviously it goes a little dark at the end, but
I wish something like that exists. I would say this is the nuance that a lot of people don't fully understand.
Yeah.
Nootropics didn't make me more intelligent.
Right.
I am just as intelligent now as the kid who dropped out of high school. What changed was my ability to focus. And what I've found in talking to countless customers is most people's limitations are not their intelligence, but it's their ability to focus, to have energy to get through their tasks, to unblock different aspects of their creativity. And that's what nootropics can do. And that nuance, like people have that expectation where it's just like, okay, it's gonna open up different parts of my mind. It's more like, examples are like riders who are good riders, but they just get writer's block and they get stuck and they're just like not making progress. This can unblock that ability in them. Or for me, a lot of it was focus. Like I would sit down and I would try to focus, going back to those early days with the GMAT, and I just couldn't do it. Like it took so much energy from me just to sit and concentrate and like sit still and like try to read the page and understand it. It wasn't that it was an intelligence thing. It drained so much energy just to try to sit and do it. And then my mind would go blank and I couldn't like internalize the information. Nootropics can unblock that and did for me. And that's a very different thing than making you more intelligent.
Right.
Yeah, of course. I was just something.
I mean, it seems like this could help so many. I mean, this can help adults, but I'm just thinking of like high schoolers, college kids in school that had similar issues that you had. Gosh, I mean, I think about my own learning. I wish I would have had these a long time ago, but is there anyone that shouldn't use them? Like, could you give them to teenagers? I mean, there's 6-year-olds like, that are being prescribed ADHD medication, and this is not a prescription medicine. Do you have experience like with your customers who are using them with their children or?
None of our products are meant for children. And it's because the research that went into creating the formulas was performed on adults. There just isn't enough research on how children would respond to this. My goal is that one day we will have products for children. I keep going back to how painful my childhood was.
Yeah.
And having something like this available to children is really important. We have 2 product lines. So we have Stasis in addition to just Thesis. Stasis is the first of its kind product that's synergistic with stimulants. So stimulants are highly effective. For me, I was not able to take prescription stimulants. Some things like coffee and caffeine are somewhat effective for me in certain contexts. But a lot of people, stimulants are highly effective. And like I mentioned, they can come with some pretty bad side effects. So we have a product that essentially helps your body. It supports your body's natural mechanism of homeostasis. So as I mentioned before, stimulants increase levels of dopamine or norepinephrine, but they also increase levels of cortisol in the body, the stress hormone. And having this chronic elevated levels of cortisol can start setting off different responses in the body. And we found that pairing that with things that are adaptogens to kind of modulate cortisol levels. One of the other mechanisms with stimulants is they increase levels of oxidative stress. Oxidative stress is something that's really normal to have in the body. Intense exercise can increase oxidative stress. Your body has a natural antioxidant system. But if you're taking stimulants daily, we found it very helpful to supplement with antioxidants, powerful antioxidants, so that you can fight free radicals, neutralize them, and do less damage to your cells. And over time, because some people take these stimulants for an extended period of time, the impact can be dramatic.
Okay, so that's the Stasis product line, Stasis.
Yep.
Okay. And so
I can show you. This is how Stasis works. You take 2 pills in the morning alongside your stimulant. And then you take 2 pills in the evening. And that kind of like refreshes and helps you go into deep sleep. One of the difficulties with people who take stimulants is being able to unwind and get into sleep. It addresses kind of like the major complaints that most people have, which is jitters, crash, and trouble sleeping. It also is meant to protect some of your cells through the antioxidant mechanism. I think it's life-changing. I don't take stimulants. I go back, I formulate, I help make these products, and I test them rigorously. The only time I go on stimulants is when I test these products, I can tell you, I notice a huge difference. And we've gotten so many positive customer reviews that just say that this is life-changing.
So can you clarify stimulants once again? So are you saying like people that drink coffee, or are you saying people that are on like prescription medicines that are stimulants? Not that.
To me, I look at it from a neuroscience standpoint. Most stimulants act on dopamine and norepinephrine and increase those neurotransmitters for people who need to increase those neurotransmitters. So that's broadly speaking, caffeine, things like amphetamine salts, which is Adderall, Vyvanse, lisdexamfetamine, methylphenidate, which is not an amphetamine, but it behaves
So these are
very similar.
prescription medicines, basically.
It
aside
does
from the
not have
caffeine.
to be prescription medicines, but anything that falls under that category of a stimulant. So it can be over the counter, it could be coffee, anything like that. If you're taking a form of a stimulant and you're experiencing jitters, crash, trouble sleeping, what we found is, so this is what, in Thesis, the goal is through this iterative process and customization, people are able to get much better results than just an off-the-shelf form.
Mhm.
What we found with Stasis is when somebody's taking a stimulant, they very predictably altered their brain chemistry. So we have a precision targeted formula. People who are not taking stimulants should not take Stasis. This is
Okay.
targeted specifically to people who are experiencing these negative downsides due to taking a stimulant. And there's always this trade-off. I remember when I was taking stimulants, I would have that pill in my hand and I'm like, I can take this and I'm going to be productive, but I'm also going to be kind of miserable. I'm not going to want to go out tonight. My partner is, I'm not going to show up for her in the way that I want to. But if I don't take it, I'm going to spend every ounce of my energy trying to stay on task. And it's such a difficult decision. Having this extra option to kind of like, and it's not perfect, it's not going to make everything, go away, but it's enough that it has a huge impact on the way that I work and function.
Interesting. Okay, so that makes sense. So then with Thesis, I understand it's very personalized depending on your goals. If you don't have ADHD or some of those issues, do you have customers that still see a benefit to using the products?
To Thesis?
Yeah.
Your Thesis is not meant to treat people with ADHD. What I see right now, if you have trouble focusing, you go to a physician and they have one tool, and that's a prescription stimulant.
Mhm.
I don't think that should be the first line of defense. There's also like the testing that they do to see if somebody has ADHD. In practice, people who potentially, this is, also from the CDC, stimulants are being overprescribed to people that might not meet all the criteria necessary to prescribe them, just because focus is harder nowadays. There's like work from home, TikTok, there's a lot more distractions and more people are getting diagnosed. So what I see, I think Thesis should be the first line of defense. Hey, you have trouble focusing. Maybe that's ADHD. Maybe that's something severe and you need a prescription stimulant. Maybe you don't. Maybe you're just distracted and maybe something like Thesis is going to get you there. Why don't you try it? I think it's going to work for the majority of people, but it's not going to work for everyone. And some people will need to escalate. And so then it's like, hey, I've tried this. I've tried different behavioral interventions. I need a stimulant. Stimulants are a highly effective medication for ADHD. I think there should be no stigma around it, no judgment. If you need to take a stimulant to function, that's fine. I also think if stimulants works for me without the side effects, I would be taking them now. I have no problem with stimulants. I have no problem giving stimulants to kids when it's absolutely clear that they need it, and it shouldn't be the first resort. Stasis is the first thing that's synergistic, where it's like, if you do choose to escalate, you should also do something healthy to, protect normal brain function.
Yeah. So are there any real side effects to taking Thesis?
They're rare, but with anything,
Yeah.
there's side effects.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
some people experience mild nausea, mild headache with some of the products. We just tell them discontinue it. That means it's not your formula.
Yeah.
So for example, this is one of my favorite formulas. It has ingredients that target acetylcholine, the neurotransmitter system acetylcholine. Some people are sensitive and some people already get enough in their diet. So like salmon, almonds have some of the ingredients that are in here. And if you have that high in the diet and you're particularly sensitive to that, adding more can cause some of those effects. And it's just like, hey, either you need to lower your dosage or it's just not a good fit and move on to the next formula. But it's rare.
Okay. And what about like sourcing of the ingredients and testing? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. I mean, so this started in my apartment. I have what we call the mom test. So, you know, my family takes this, my friends take this, all of our team here takes this. We want to feel good about what we put in our body. And so from how we select the ingredients, how we source them, we want to make sure that they're the best. We source all of our own ingredients from manufacturers, distributors. We third-party lab test every single ingredient in every single batch, period. It costs a lot of money. It is not required by the FDA. I believe it should be, but we don't have proprietary formulas, so you can see every single ingredient, the exact dosage. We use clinically studied dosage ranges on all of our primary ingredients, not all of our supporting ingredients, but we use very impactful dosages. And yeah, if you want to see, so you can message us and you're like, hey, I want to see the clarity formula. This is my batch number. And we will send you third-party lab tests down to, on this day, this is the technician. Here's his signature. Here's the HPLC reading that you can see the graph. It's not just, yeah, this is lion's mane. It's what percentage of the active ingredient is in there. Heavy metals, micro, all of that stuff done.
And are you said you're sourcing all the ingredients. Are you sourcing like, you know, the fruiting body and like on the lion's mane, and like, how are you determining what is a safe product to source?
Yeah, so it's not regulated. So somebody can tell you this is the fruiting body. Somebody can tell you this is dual extracted. This is a 10-to-1. From what we found, sadly, because there isn't regulation, those things don't really mean anything. In lion's mane, the main active ingredient is irinosine. So we send it to a lab and we say, what percentage of irinosine is in here? Same thing like ashwagandha. Ashwagandha, the active ingredient for most of the cognitive benefits. And there are, so like lion's mane has beta glucans, which is great for immunity, but not for it's not important for us because we're sourcing for cognitive benefits, so we don't test for that. Ashwagandha, it's withanolides. So ashwagandha, there's a lot of different, it could be the root, it could be the leaves, it could be the genetics of the plant, where's it sourced from, how's it stored, all of this stuff. And because there's no regulation, we can't really trust anything. So we just say, what percentage of withanolides is in it? We send it to a lab to verify. And if it's not high enough, we don't use it, period.
Yeah. Well, that sounds very thorough. And just
complicated.
Comforting, and very complicated, thorough, expensive, all that. So question for you, kind of deviating a little bit. Marnie and I are doing this endurance event in September. Are there any specific formulas? It's a lot of hiking over a 36-hour period. So we started our training last week. Any specific formulations you would recommend more from like an athletic performance? I mean, energy sounds like it could be very helpful on the mountain, Marnie.
So we don't formulate for physical performance.
Okay.
I almost look at it as a side effect. So we have one formula where people report weight loss, like a positive form of weight loss. We had like people were writing in like, oh my God, like I feel so like not only have I gotten all these cognitive benefits, but the scale keeps going down, and it's not meant for that. I look at it as like a positive side effect. That formula is motivation. Most of the people that are using our product for physical activity, it goes down to energy and motivation. Those are both targeted to the same neurotransmitter systems, dopamine and norepinephrine. Some people find that clarity improves focus in certain activities. So especially sports, we have a lot of people who take sports and they're like, that was the best tennis game of my life. I just got into this flow state. Or like golfers, surprisingly, a lot of golfers love it. And even
that's a very mental game. It seems like maybe some of those sports that really involve that mental focus.
Yeah.
Where these could help.
Again, I look at those as side effects. And we have, so one of our investors is Kevin Love. And, you know, our product is not meant to be taken for sports activities, but he takes our products in several ways. Clarity is something that he absolutely loves, and it just kind of happened. I know of a lot of athletes that take our product. Again, we don't gear it towards enhancing sports performance, and I think that there's plenty of research on other products and other ingredients that will enhance sport performance, but there are, you know, team doctors that are recommending our product and stuff like that.
So just to clarify, because you answered this, but I'm still unclear a little bit. You can stack them, but they're not necessarily meant to be stacked. Is that what you were saying?
So I would recommend the majority of people take 1 packet a day in the morning. I am a super user. I take 2 packets a day. I also work a lot. There are customers that will do that. They'll take 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon. It's safe to do so, but it's not meant for that.
Okay.
It's not, you'll get so many benefits just by taking 1 product in the morning. And also I do 12 to 16 hours of work a day. Most people don't.
Wow. Yeah. Well, I bet you're really looking forward to that retreat you're going on with those long work days. So
yeah, I mean, I honestly love what I do. And, you know, when I was a chef, I started to burn out. I started to hate life. I started to get miserable. And I watch out that that doesn't happen to me now, because sometimes running a company can be really stressful. And some of the problems that land on my desk, I really am not excited about.
Yeah.
But I love the people I work with. I love the culture we have. I genuinely enjoy coming into the office every day. I love hearing from customers about transformational stories, and all of those things counteract any of that negative stuff. And it doesn't feel like I'm grinding 16 hours a day.
Yeah.
That
No, you
makes
clearly
sense.
enjoy what you do and you have a lot of passion for it, just given what you shared today. So Dan, as we, you know, I feel like we could keep going on and on, but we do need to start wrapping up this conversation. We love leaving our listeners with just some practical tips, and you've already shared so much, but is there any advice you have that someone could, you know, immediately implement into their lives? Someone who's maybe curious about this, or, you know, could use a little boost? Anything from your life that you'd want to share?
I would say, so I'll first address nootropics. Don't give up. I think that the biggest thing, and this is heartbreaking that I see, is people will come in and they'll try a product, whether it's our product or usually like they go in Walmart and they buy something off the shelf or on Amazon, and they're willing to give it a try once. And if it doesn't work immediately, they're just like, okay, this doesn't work. I give up. This is all bullshit. And when you think about it, there's very few things in life that work like that. It's like, hey, maybe that was a bad brand or the wrong ingredients for you. Like, really give it a shot and try multiple things. That's what I like about our product, is in the first month, you can try 4 different ingredient sets. That's the number one thing I would recommend for somebody trying nootropics, is just have clear expectations. Don't give up if you don't get immediate positive results. Like anything, you do need to put in some work. I have a lot of advice. I think one of the things that you kind of like touched on earlier was, I would not be here today if it wasn't for cultivating like incredible people and community around me. Especially as the company's grown, like the people who are on our board, friends, advisors, all these people have had a huge impact on my life. I think I'm fortunate enough now that I'm able to give back and I can mentor people. That's just so deeply enjoyable and meaningful that it adds so much to my life. And I think taking that conscious approach of like, one, how can I put myself out there and ask for that when I need it? And how can I give that back when I have the opportunity?
I think that's amazing and so important. So thank you for doing that in your community. And Dan, where can people find you? Where can they buy your products, learn more?
So we will give you a discount code, The Art of Living Well, so that all the listeners, if they're curious, they can come and try it. We have the 2 product lines that I mentioned. Thesis is for people who are not taking stimulants and are looking to improve different aspects of cognition. They can go to the website, take a quick quiz. It takes a couple of minutes, and then they'll get their recommendations. I think it's really interesting to take the quiz anyway, because you'll be able to see, we give you a readout on kind of like, what's your sleep score? What's your productivity score? So that you can see different areas where kind of like where you are. For people who are currently taking stimulants, I would recommend that they go to Stasis. The website is takestasis.com and give that a try. And
Great.
there are some people that take stimulants and they're fine. I would say that there's 2 things. If you're taking stimulants and experiencing jitters, crash, trouble sleeping, Stasis is an incredible fit. I think that there's also, for people who are on it for a long period of time, especially at higher dosages or, putting their body through like increasing levels of oxidative stress, cortisol, things like that, it's really helpful to have something to supplement to support your body's natural mechanism of homeostasis.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I just want to add one
And-
thing. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, my goal is to have products for kids, but currently our products are not meant for kids.
So 18 and up?
18 and up.
Okay.
Okay. So it's funny, my now 19-year-old found your products on social media, thanks to social media. So your social media folks are doing a good job, because I shared like a photo when these arrived and then I started to take them, and he messaged me and he's like, "Mom, where did you learn about these? I've been following them and I've been interested in thinking about wanting to get some." So I am going to get him a kit, but I did give him like one of the boxes. I think it was Energy, to take back to school with him. So I think there's probably a lot of college age kids that are very intrigued by this, and they're becoming a little bit more just overall like health and wellness minded, and looking for some alternatives to just maybe taking a stimulant, or
A pharmaceutical.
Yeah.
pharmaceutical stimulant. Yes. Not just coffee.
I mean, that's the thing. Stimulants are highly effective and they should be used. And there's a lot of people that would not be able to make it through college without a stimulant.
Yeah.
However, they are so widely abused,
Mhm.
especially in college, where people are just passing around Adderalls.
Yeah.
People are going to pill mill type doctors and getting prescribed just because it's there. They work, but I think a lot of people underestimate the short and long-term consequences, and I've seen it go bad so many times. What I strongly believe is there just needs to be more options. So right now it's just like this Adderall or nothing. And I think the more options and the more transparency around those options and having the conversation around safety is really important.
I agree. So thank you for doing that.
Hmm.
Dan, as we wrap up this conversation, one question we love to ask is, what does the art of living well mean to you?
I look at kind of like the growth trajectory that naturally, I think if I did nothing to invest in my growth, I think it naturally goes down. It's just like the default that, and it's also like I age, my physical health, all of these things like, whereas when I'm prioritizing growth, and that's in everything from like my relationships, the challenges that I'm dealing with, like my life expands And growth comes with discomfort. It comes with pain. And, some of these experiences I don't like, but I want that growth on the other side and it makes me better. To me, that's the core of the art of living, is like being able to embrace the good, the bad, and learn from it and have that upward trajectory where I can look back a year from now and I'm like, wow, I'm capable of handling more. My life has expanded. I feel healthier, happier, and it's not always a straight line. It's usually like this, but over any considerable period of time, if I'm doing what I want to do, it gets better.
I love that. And Stephanie and I always say, yes, we can do hard things, right?
Yes.
And when you're reflecting, you see all the stuff that you've been through and where it's led you to today.
And I think your story, Dan, is so inspirational for kids and teenagers out there who are struggling with a variety of different challenges, especially the last few years. So kudos to you to just keep getting out there and sharing that with other people. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that I love about the podcast is I'll get emails or messages from people that are like, I listened to your podcast. That sounds like my brother, my son, my daughter, or that sounds like me. Like what you articulated is like that core of like, I know that I have this potential and I want to do this, but I can't get around this challenge. And then they try the product and they're like, that gave me enough, context to give this a try. And it's life-changing.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for your time today and sharing your story and your products. We highly encourage everyone to get out there and buy a starter kit and see which one works for you.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it.
Have a great day.